How's everybody doing tonight? Good. You all made it in the wind? I heard some trees fell down. Anybody see a fallen tree? Only a few people? Okay, well, hopefully we don't see any more fallen trees. My name is Robin Snyder, and I just want to welcome you tonight to our parent night. We have these monthly throughout the school year, so we have this one tonight, and we'll have, actually we have two next month in March because we're doing a repeat of last month's. We had a request to repeat last month's, but we do want to make sure that we invite all of you to all of our parent nights. We'll do these again next year too with different topics, and maybe we'll duplicate some of the topics that were requested frequently. So welcome, thank you for coming. I see some very familiar faces because you've been here every month, so thank you for joining us again. Before we get started with our event tonight, I do want to recognize some people. So we have our Clovis East Area Transitions team, and I want to say a huge thank you to them. They are who served you dinner tonight and provided dinner for this event. So a huge thank you to them. Each of our parent nights, we're partnering with a different transitions team, so each of our parent nights have featured a different team. Thea, would you like to say anything, or you guys are good?
Well, thank you so much for coming, and I was a little nervous because of the weather and then having too much food, but we do have so much food that if you are hungry and you would like seconds, please feel free to sneak back there and grab some more. But thank you so much for coming. We cover a lot of topics that I feel are very poignant and give our parents as much information as possible to make sure our students are successful and safe in school.
Thank you. All right. If you have any questions about transitions teams, I'm sure somebody from their team will hang out until the end of the meeting. We've talked about it a few times during our parent nights, and I know that that topic has come up, so we might even do a parent night around transitions just to make sure that everyone is fully informed about what our transition teams do at our elementary, junior high, and high schools. But if you have any questions for them, feel free to pop back there and ask them. They'll be hanging out in the other room serving food still for a little bit. Also, tonight's topic is social media awareness. There's lots of crazy things that are going on in social media, and as a parent of 4 kids, this is a really important topic for me, and as an educator, it's an important topic for me because we're always watching what are my kids in my house doing and what are my kids in my classroom doing. So we are really, really excited to see so many parents here to learn alongside us about the dangers of social media. We have 3 presenters tonight. So our first ones are Cy and Melissa, who work here for Clovis Unified, and they're gonna come up and start our event tonight. And then we also have Krista Weens from the Justice Coalition, who's going to present after them. I do also wanna warn you there's gonna be a short video during Krista's presentation that is a little bit, what's the best word to use to describe it? It could be difficult to watch. We're going to show you just a portion of the video. We'll give you the link if you want to watch the rest of it. But if you have a small child in here, you probably want to take them out during that video portion of the event. And if you have any questions, you'll be able to ask Krista those questions as well. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Cy and Melissa. Thank you.
I think we just clip it right here. Good evening, how are we doing? Thank you guys so much for coming. Tonight we're going to talk about social media. And what is interesting when we talk about social media from a school psychologist and a mental health support provider perspective is our students have access to a lot of technology, now access to a lot of applications, a lot of social media applications. And we just want to be very transparent about the risk factors so that you guys as parents and families can start to have dialogue and to start have conversations about social media, its uses, its benefits, but some of the problems that can occur from having access to social media. And we talk about students, your children, and their development. I want you to think about their development of their brain, their ability to think, problem solve, resist impulses. All of that development happens in the frontal lobe, and that is the last developmental piece of our human brain that takes place. And that happens at the age of 18 when our students are ready to go and become independent adults. So just think about the development of all of the things that we're asking them to do, not just in the classroom, but also in the community, in their activities, in their social lives, how that might come into play with their access to technology and their access to apps. I'm going to give you guys the opportunity to access our presentation through a QR code. So if you have a smartphone, you're able to use your camera function, and it'll give you access to a copy of our presentation.
This is a parent test. This is a parent technology test, right? If you know what the QR code is, you can figure out how to get.
Okay.
It's right here as well, right?
Yep, it's also on your packet. Okay, I'm going to ask you guys to engage with me in a little bit of a challenge, okay? I'm going to ask each of you to put your cell phones in the middle of your table. You're going to make a little community cell phone basket. And that cell phone, your device, is going to stay there for the entirety of our presentation. And I just want you to think about how it feels, what impulses might be there, and how difficult it is to resist that temptation to grab your phone, okay? So in the next 10 seconds, we're going to see all of our cell phones in the middle of the table. Okay? And then as we wrap up at the end of the evening, I'm just going to ask for your thoughts, your feelings, and how that made you feel. Okay? Table one. Good? Okay. All right. Throughout our presentation, I just want to front load you and let you know that we have a lot of videos within our presentation. The videos do contain content that might be uncomfortable for you, okay? But we want to provide you with the most transparent experience and an authentic role and perspective of social media and how it impacts your children. So there's content on there that might make you feel uncomfortable. It might make you want to go to the gym and work out your glutes, but that is some of the content that you will see tonight, okay?
So current school trends with our teams, as I said, I am the mental health support provider out at the Reagan Educational Center. So I have 7th through 12th grade students that I get to work with. So when we look at those trends, social skills deficits, how do I fit in? Where do I fit in? Who do I fit in with? And you will see this in one of the videos later where students talk about changing themselves basically so they can fit into a particular peer group, right? There's a loss of identity as a result of the internet. So students don't want to be themselves. They want to be who they're going to fit in with. Okay. So, and along those same lines with the social skills deficits, obviously when you're online, right, it's not the same as a face-to-face, it's not a face-to-face interaction. They're not talking to each other like we are now. They're literally looking at a screen. And so it's a lot easier to say and do things, right, to other students, to other people, when you have that sense of anonymity, right? There's no, you don't put a face with what you're typing. You're just typing, and that's that. So students are having a really difficult time with those social skills and not being able to communicate or interact face-to-face with peers. And I see this every day at lunch when I walk by a group of students who, instead of, talking to each other, they're all on their phones talking to each other, texting each other instead of communicating. So they're not learning, like Sai said, they're not learning how to problem solve with each other. They're not learning how to interact with each other and how to communicate. Again, poor social problem solving, lack of conflict resolution skills, again, because they don't have to. They're not having that face-to-face. And so everything is done online, whether it's through an app or via text. That is how they are problem solving. That's how they're communicating instead of working it out with someone. Difficulty with sustained focus and impulse control. Again, you'll hear in one of the videos later, or one of the things that we learned through putting this together, one of the students was talking about basically changing apps every 30 seconds. So as they're scrolling through their phone, oh, I'm bored, on to the next app. Every 30 seconds they are changing. So over the course of, you know, the 2 hours they're online, they are literally jumping from one thing to another without any kind of sustained focus. And again, that impulse control, because they're not having that interaction. And they feel like they can say anything that they want to online because they're anonymous. And again, the identity, the real me versus the web me. And you'll see, again, especially unfortunately with females, that desire to fit in, that desire to be liked, and what that looks like online, right? I don't post a picture of myself on Sunday morning right after I wake up with, you know, no makeup, the hair in a bun. No, I got to make sure that I am looking good so that I can get the likes. And like I said, you'll see that in the videos later in terms of identity and wanting to find their place to fit in, and unfortunately sometimes going about that the wrong way. So what you'll see here, again, through the course of the videos, it all goes back to the cell phone. And we have students now in elementary school for the most part. The majority of our students at elementary school have access to a cell phone, which again gives them access to the internet, gives them access to apps. And we're going to look at what the impact is as a result of the cell phones and access to the internet and social media.
I saw all my friends slowly starting to get phones, and I was like, well, I want to be able to text my friends. I want to be able to do fun things on your phone. It's a fun thing.
When Annabelle was 5, I gave them their first iPod. I was 11 when I started feeling pressured. Even before that, people had cell phones.
Kids are ostracized. By the time they hit middle school, they go in 6th grade. Almost everyone has a phone, and if you don't have a phone, then it's almost like a bullying thing.
You can do better than your peers if you have access to some social media that allows you to engage and know when things are happening and that you don't miss out. Peers judge other peers by their knowledge of what's happening.
Certainly in the last 5 years, we've seen kids' usage of devices continue to increase. We've also seen kids getting devices younger and younger. The rates at which they're experiencing certain types of problems continues to increase.
I'm Kellyanne. I have worked in multiple different areas with teens, Children's Hospital, nonprofit. I met this group of girls when they were freshmen, and I have been with them now for 4 years, so they're seniors. They have access to me 24/7. What's the max amount you think in one day in the past 3 years? If you had picked the one day you spent the most time on your phone, how long do you think it was?
Oh, I'd say 18 hours, maybe.
Say 5. The last 2 months, it's been 8, 9.
10, 11 hours a day. Yeah, maybe 12.
So in the past 10 years or so, the time that they're spending on them has skyrocketed. On average, maybe 7 hours a day. It's a lot of time when you also have to do school and sleep and eat. 7 hours a day is like a work shift.
There's a lot to do on your phone. You can text people, you can play games, take videos, take pictures. There's a lot to do.
We've always had these things that captured our attention, but there is a certain level of precision with which today's technology hones in on our neurology and the way that we are wired.
Social media and other internet platforms make their money by keeping users engaged, and so they've hired the greatest engineering and tech minds to get users to stay longer inside of their apps and on their websites.
I use Instagram, Snapchat.
Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok.
2 Instagram accounts. I can just scroll for hours on end.
I use Instagram, Twitter.
Instagram, definitely.
My favorite Snapchat.
If I was to delete Snapchat, I don't think I would hang out.
I don't know what's going on with Snapchat. There's stuff called TikTok.
The social media games like TikTok and Fortnite.
Yeah, I look up from my phone after being there for 15 minutes and it's been an hour.
Scrolling through Instagram.
And then I end up watching other people's videos for 5 hours on end.
Watch Netflix for a time and then go off Netflix, check Snapchat, check Instagram, go back on Netflix.
What I really do when I'm not online is kind of just sit on my ass and eat.
I call it the race to the bottom of the brainstem. So it starts with techniques like pull to refresh. So you pull to refresh your newsfeed. That operates like a slot machine. It has the kind of addictive qualities that keep people in Las Vegas hooked.
So it starts with access. And some of the stats by the age of 11. And that is 6th grade. We also know, based on that video, that on average, our teens are spending about 7 hours a day on their phones, scrolling through social media, texting, communicating, absorbing information, navigating their algorithms to get a supply and demand of information based on their interests. And so it starts. Those algorithms are created to maintain focus on that device. They're using those interests of the student to populate more information based on their interest. And so that's how it starts. On our PowerPoint, you'll see that students have grown in their access based from 2015 to 2021. At age 11, that is the highest peak of access to cell phone use that we've seen, and it continues to increase each year. Through that, we also know that in 2022, just last year, access to a smartphone jumped up from 73% in 2014 to 2015. So based on about 8 years, that increase has skyrocketed significantly. So what is social media? Well, it's a web-based platform that allows for communication, two-way communication. It allows for conversations. It allows our students to share information. But the scary part is that it allows them the opportunity and the forum to build and create content. And that is, I think, where the concerns come up at the dinner table and in our school offices. We also know that there are hundreds of social media platforms. As you guys came in this evening, you were asked to write down how many social media platforms you could think of. Did anybody get more than 10? More than 20? Oh, more than 20, you're the winner. Oh, how many did you get? 28? 108. You guys won a dinner for two. Oh, you guys won a dinner for two with a bottle of water for tonight. And a book. We have a social media parenting book. But there are hundreds of platforms, and they're not going away. They're creating more every day because they help build our society to be more efficient, more productive in our communication, and more accessible to our interests. Based on our teen choices, these are stats provided by the Pew Research Center. We know that YouTube is one of the most highly used social media platforms of our teens. Second to that, TikTok. Third, Instagram. Fourth, Snapchat. Fifth, Facebook. And then there's Twitter. Those are the 5 most commonly used apps. And we'll learn a little bit more about them as we go. So with access comes the potential for harm. So we want to be very transparent about cyberbullying, and the next segment of videos goes over some of the means in which cyberbullying occurs.
You could be the meanest, most horrible thing in the world. And if somebody sees you have like 6,000 followers on Instagram at school, or like you get a ton of likes, they'll be your friends. They don't care what you're like.
Are you gonna be on my side if I let you up? Sure, kid, sure. I'm on your side. Just let me up. I'll do anything you say.
When I was a student, bullying was always in person. In my neighborhood, the bully lived up the hill, and we would be careful not to go that direction, because if he was outside, grab your bike and harass you.
Get off, I wanna ride it. Oh no, kid, not my new bike.
Oh, I was bullied
all through school.
And I can remember the kid who you all just kind of knew was mean to people, whether it was on the playground or other places. I'm not going to say his name. I'm sure he's a great guy now.
Bullying happened at school or on the bus.
The ways in which this person could have access to my life were pretty limited. In this case, it was the 7 hours that I was at school.
Now it's always available. It's going to follow them everywhere.
Have any of you ever been harassed online?
Yes, 120%. People are still just like mean.
Yeah, they're called trolls. They just like troll you and try to make you feel bad.
Trolls are just kind of a part of the society we live in nowadays.
Our bullying did not go in front of the whole world on social media. To them, it feels like it went out to the whole world.
Personally, like, I don't really get those, well,
Where are the safe places for a kid growing up? Because as soon as I get home, everyone goes to their room and the devices come out and everything that was horrible about what just happened is shared over and over and over again.
By 6th grade, he was like bullying me on Instagram and my friends were telling me, and I had no means to defend myself.
Well, honestly, I do think it's worse to be bullied online because you don't know who you're talking to.
Big picture, he was bullied in a lot of different ways, and part of the way that also showed up was through text message.
You know, it was in person in school, in the classroom, divide and conquer, as well as cyber. And so it was coming at him from all angles.
And it would never shut off, but the cyber stuff, so I would block kid A and block kid B, and they would give Ethan's number. And then they started texting Gavin. They had Gavin's ID and messages were coming in through. Gavin was, what, 6 at the time? They were relentless.
He was the target.
It was relentless.
When I finally did get a phone in 7th grade, it got bad because I also got Snapchat around the same time. And so I could now see what he was posting about me.
Every kid sees this happening. It's hitting a much larger and broader audience than it ever used to. You know, and sometimes people pile on.
It's another thing when the bully gets 25 people in a text thread and it's all directed at you. It's a different scale and it's a different time.
It's an amplifier for the worst parts of us. Let's take an example like Twitter. It's calculating what is the thing that I can show you that gets the most engagement. And it turns out that outrage, moral outrage, gets the most engagement. So it was found in a study that for every word of moral outrage that you add to a tweet, it increases your retweet rate by 17%.
If they didn't have tech, I swear they would have a black guy every day.
There are just so many more channels through which I can be a complete jerk that don't involve me being in front of you, which is the great neutralizer of cruelty. Because if I see you and I look you in the eye, we tend to treat each other differently.
He was having a really difficult time. He was very agitated. And it had to do with his phone. And I couldn't understand because we found some text messages on it that concerned me. And I asked him about it, and I took the phone from him, and we talked. We shared some tears, and I said, really, son, what's going on here?
A couple days after Christmas, the stomach pains got so bad we had to go to the emergency room. I was convinced he had appendicitis. He was in so much pain. He threw up 2 or 3 times. His blood work's good. This is weird, like we don't know. And I knew in that moment it was anxiety. I knew it. We got him through the other side, but there was a place there where it was so dark, I thought, this is it. This is that tipping moment where we lost our kid.
You know, certainly there's an element that kids need to learn resilience, and they need to understand that people are not always going to agree with them, and they may even tease them. And there's an element that that's okay, because we can't train kids to expect that they will always be shielded from any negative thing in their life. That said, it's important for a parent to know where in the spectrum it is for your child relative to where they are in their developmental cycle.
So it's definitely there. It's definitely there, but I'm certain it's probably more behind people's backs nowadays.
Cyberbullying is definitely, like Charlie said, a lot more subtle than people like to make it out to be.
So what happens when somebody takes somebody off Instagram?
Oh, it's a big thing.
It's a big
Yeah,
deal.
It's like, you know, when you block someone on Instagram, like you can tell, like we all know the signs of like when somebody blocks you on Instagram, and it's like a big thing because, you know, this person doesn't like you anymore.
That group photo where I don't tag that one girl. That parents may not pick up on that, but that is a subtle way of saying, I'm not gonna tag you. or I'm not going to like that photo, or whatever it might be. We've attached worth to those things. And that's a little subtle jab that I think kids are doing all the time. I see it, I hear it.
What about the constant awareness that you're not invited to something or you're being left out?
I hate that. Nothing makes me more upset than that.
When people hang out or do something cool, then they're gonna post it and then just shows like, hey, you're not here. You suck.
I would actually like, what did I do wrong? Like, I must have done something wrong. Like, I need to fix something about my character. Like, I actually need to completely change myself. Who would be the person that would be invited, and then make myself into that?
It's not outright, and it's not something you can just see when you go online. It's something that's behind the scenes, and it's something that affects someone over years and years, and slowly changes the way they think.
Just want to repeat something that those group of girls stated. When they're not invited to something, it's like the worst thing.
I must have done something wrong.
Or I need to change my character. Or I need to change myself so that I can be like those girls who got invited to that party. And so just think about that being your kid and not being appreciated for who they are, or trying to mold themselves to be something different so that they can fit into a peer group.
No, it's so cyberbullying, again, huge issue on our campuses, every campus. Nearly half, 46% of teens have experienced cyberbullying, at least one type of cyberbullying listed below. The most prevalent is offensive name calling, right, in the comments or that they text. Spreading false rumors about them. 17% have received explicit images they didn't ask for. Think about that. 17% of our teens have received an explicit image they didn't ask for on their phone, which means somebody's sending that to them as well. Right? 15% constantly being asked where they are, what they're doing, and who they're with by someone other than their parent. Okay, so again, when those two young boys were talking about, well, you don't even know who you're talking to. You don't even know who you're talking to when someone's asking, oh, where are you? What are you wearing? What are you doing? Who are you with? Right? 10% have received physical threats. And 7% have had explicit images of them shared without their consent. 7% have had explicit images of themselves shared without their consent. So on a regular basis in our discipline offices on campus, we have students coming in with screenshots of messages that they've received, be it verbal threats, physical threats, images that they didn't ask for, images that they didn't want shared. And that is the reality that our students are facing on a daily basis. As well as, again, going into the social piece of it. Like me, love me, follow me, everything revolves around their popularity, their sense of identity revolves around the likes that they get on Instagram, revolves around how many followers they have, how many likes they get, how many people are interested in what they're doing. And when that doesn't happen, you'll see the results and the impact it has on, again, their sense of identity, their self-confidence, and their mental health.
Being a leader 14 years ago was easier. The way kids are has definitely changed. They have less or no coping skills. They are also harder to kind of break that outer shell and talk about hard things. They don't want to. or they don't know how. It's wild. They really just don't know how to get there.
One of the greatest consequences of screen time addiction is just the lack of social development, social skills development, being able to connect with other people.
And we're seeing a lot more of that as we are becoming more aware of what social media does to our ability to have empathy and to interact with others and to see their social cues, understand their social cues, and react accordingly. We're seeing the difference that it's making, but the kids aren't.
The disconnect of even just he with his friends. I mean, it is how they connect, but how connected are they if they're all getting depressed? And
yeah, well, they don't have anything to compare it with.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like you said, we have a comparison because we grew up differently, because we didn't even have the option.
We're incredibly social creatures. That's actually what separates us, not our intelligence, but our ability to work together in communities, to thrive as humans. A huge chunk of your brain is devoted towards just understanding people's moment-to-moment facial expressions, because social signals that come very rapidly are incredibly important to us, even if in the moment we're not totally realizing how important those social signals are.
Would any of you guys say that you struggle or have struggled with anxiety or depression?
Anxiety.
In high school? But, well, yeah.
Depression.
Yeah.
Me too.
Don't.
Yes, definitely. I have an entire friend group who has latched on to each other due to their connection with depression.
Because they both are prone to anxiety and depression, I can't pinpoint whether or not it has anything to do with their device.
He's addicted to some games, I'm addicted to some games. Sometimes when we don't get it, we cry, we throw a fit.
I notice that my anxiety ramps up when I'm on my phone more, but not from like any specific thing, just kind of the more time I spend in my head, the worse off I get.
A statement that I've been making at my talks with high schoolers is, don't you all just sort of feel like every moment of every single day we're all living in a state of low-grade anxiety? And they all just kind of look at me like, yeah.
So we are seeing many more kids coming to school with diagnoses of anxiety and depression. And we also know that the teen suicide rate from 2010 to 2017 increased 56%.
My day-to-day life in the ER over the last 20 years, I think there's been two very palpable changes. One is childhood obesity, and the other is mental health issues in terms of the volume and the frequency.
I have personally seen a difference in the number of children who are coming to the ER with mental health issues, with non-suicidal self-harming and suicide attempts and suicidal ideation.
his demeanor with me and his temperament, everything is different after he's had hours of gaming or something with a friend.
Sometimes I feel like I want to give it up, but it's such a big part of teenage life, I guess you could say, that I just couldn't.
A lot of like our lives are on our phones, like texting our friends, like that's on our phones. Like we have to be on it if we want to like talk to our friends.
Like our school actually gives us information through social media, so it's kind of just like it goes hand in hand that you will be using social media and have a phone.
The lives of kids were sort of changing slowly for a while, and then all of a sudden, smartphones were easy to get. Social media was easy to get. Most people were able to afford that. Most kids were able to get on social media, and that's when everything kind of skyrocketed.
I'm addicted to my iPad.
I'm addicted.
Adults, not just teenagers, are also addicted to their phones.
Parents are the primary determinant as how a kid uses technology. In other words, if we want our kids to be consuming technology differently, then we first need to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, would we want them using their technology exactly how I do?
The race for attention has to get more and more aggressive, and so it's not enough just to get your behavior and predict what will take your behavior. We have to predict how to keep you hooked in a different way. And so it crawled deeper down the brainstem into our social validation. So that was the introduction of likes and followers.
I post a lot. I used to, like, I almost like have like a mental schedule, like, okay, like each month I'll post. And like I'll edit the picture and like make it look really good. Now I just kind of like post like when I want to. And I like delete posts that I don't get like a lot of likes. I like to have a lot of likes on my posts. Just to like, it just makes you feel good.
You feel better when people are like, yeah, you're looking good, but then at other times you feel horrible because people aren't liking your post, but you can see they looked at it.
No, I don't care. I mean, it sucks when my art doesn't get a whole lot of likes.
They call each other and say, hey, do me a favor, like my picture. I need more likes on my...
Like, it's really easy for you to be like, oh, look at this other girl. Like, she got this many more likes. Like, her body's this much nicer.
Are they chasing likes? Are they, as some young people say, you know, I'll put a photo up and if I don't get 50 likes right away, I'm taking it down.
And that got it was much cheaper to, instead of getting your attention, to get you addicted to getting attention from other people. And this has created the kind of mass narcissism and mass cultural thing that's happening with young people, especially today.
I think people's online status does connect to their popularity at school. I'd say they're kind of symbiotic, like they both feed off of each other.
Look at this, I have a 400 streak with this person. I'm better than you. Or look at this, I got 600 likes on Instagram. I'm better than you. They just want to be famous. They just want people to adore them.
They're hoping to get famous, they're hoping to get popular, they're hoping to get validated by strangers on the internet. Clout addiction? You know what clout is?
It's not as if all of a sudden a separate part of our brain evolved in the past 10 years to separate out social signals from social media, from those social signals that we get in real life. The social feedback is literally rewarding when it's positive, and it's literally punishing when it's negative.
Ms. Stanfield, I was a little confused by one thing you said. Did you say Google doesn't use persuasive technology?
That is correct, sir.
What gets the most likes?
More spin, more likes.
Parental advisory.
Bathing suits.
You have to sexualize yourself, or you have to post a bikini pic or something that's revealing in order to get a lot of likes.
The more attractive you are, more likes you get. Hot girls get a lot of likes.
Parents' day and age, you couldn't get on your phone and get Kim Kardashian's life. We have the ability to compare ourselves with other people.
We weren't really worried about what we were wearing because everybody in the whole world wasn't watching us. The pressure to maintain the perfect image online is huge. On the flip side, if they post something and either don't get likes or get poor comments, then it's hit with depression.
But you know what you look like. You can see yourself. You don't need...
yeah, but it's not how you look like this, it's like how you look like on that.
It's not checking to see if their hair's okay. It's seeing if they look like the girl that they saw on Instagram that was perfect.
Seeing people like that, it's like, why can't I, look like that?
And it's weird because we know that they're made up and they're not like 100% authentic pictures.
Girls like strongly edit their pictures and like you can tell like the wall is bent at their waist or like
but it just still makes you feel like
They're always ready for a phone. It's like they're constantly prepared to be captured by something and be shown to the world.
I have two boys, John and Jack. Jack's younger of the two. John's 21, Jack was 15. Jack was a very outgoing, typical teenager, 14 and 15. Rambunctious, outgoing, very compassionate, pretty much an empathetic kid.
He was a really sensitive person, and I think that was one of his best attributes, because he could like tell when you were feeling down, and without even asking you or having a conversation with you, he just could like pick that up. Total empath.
He was so kind to other kids. And I wonder if that sense of kindness made him more susceptible to feeling.
Was there much talk of, did you remember there being suicides or anything like that?
Never. I never heard that. We were worried, we were more worried about physical illnesses, but I don't remember there being a problem with suicide.
You know, I've always liked technology, and I will say that it was hard to keep up with it, but I would stay up sometimes very late trying to figure out what my son was doing on his phone and figuring out how to use all the same apps that he used, so that I never got behind on that stuff. But, you know, that's a really difficult thing to do. I knew that it was working because Jack told me one day, Mom, I give up. You're too smart. I cannot keep up with you, and I'm just gonna tell you everything now. And he did, except one thing.
Definitely the worst day of my life was getting that phone call from my parents.
He didn't do it on purpose, and he didn't do it to hurt us. You know, he was just in a lot of pain.
Jack struggled for 9 days in the hospital. And then after about 6 weeks, we were able to crack his phone.
Someone said that there was, you know, some stuff on sale at Home Depot that would help you basically off yourself. And other kids would just come out and say, text, you know, just go kill yourself. And then this is not uncommon. He's not the first kid that's had that happen to him.
Why did I not know what anxiety was, and why do you know?
I guess they've been a little bit better about. But even then, they only made it known to us after 4 kids killed themselves.
That's true.
In Littleton alone, at the beginning of the year, there were multiple suicides before school even started.
At Children's Hospital, there is a new program for 10-year-olds and over, and they say, have you ever thought about killing yourself? Have you ever tried to hurt yourself? How do you feel about that?
So I work in one of the busiest pediatric emergency departments in the country. At any given time, we can easily have 4 or 5, sometimes 6 patients who are there waiting for a mental health evaluation or waiting to be transferred for inpatient treatment.
You hear from the CDC that suicide is the second leading cause of death in children ages 10 to 24.
In Colorado, suicide is the #1 cause of death for individuals 10 to 24.
And every day we send out, over a dozen imminent suicide alerts every single day.
It was such a rare occurrence to see that. Now it is commonplace. Has something changed about us biologically?
From 2000 and 2007, the suicide rate seemed was pretty stable and had, if anything, some years fluctuated down. But then we saw a beginning trend, and it became evident over time that it was increasing from 2010 to 2017.
Not only teen suicide, but child suicide, like 10 or 9 years old.
I said, all right, sure, what do you got? He goes, well, Friday night, I had 2 10-year-olds on Snapchat. One thought it'd be a funny idea to talk the other one into committing suicide. And she did it. She's dead.
So 43% of 1.12 million children that presented to the ERs for suicidal ideation or suicide attempt were under 11 years old.
Whether these young adults think that they're not worth anything, I guess, I don't know, but people can't deal with things now.
But I feel like a lot of people in our generation are like way more sensitive than they should be. Like, if one insignificance happens, it'll just trigger like every past thing that's happened in their life.
There's always a competition. Like with school, you're competing for the best rank. With social media, there's this unspoken, I guess, kind of competition for like most followers in a sense. If you're losing that competition, it hurts. Like it shows, you feel it in your heart.
Constantly comparing myself to others, constantly, wanting that thing or needing to be checking or not falling behind in notifications or whatever kinds of stresses are attached to that. But then you couple that with the fact that I just don't know how to live with anything coming my way. And I just think at times for some kids, it's just a toxic combination.
All right. Any reactions? Any words or statements from those 2 videos that might have stuck with you? Or any feelings that you might have? Any volunteers wanting to speak? Yeah.
Do you know what the numbers are maybe in California compared to Colorado?
I don't.
It seems crazy. I mean, really high. I know it's not crazy, but just
I would predict that our stats are pretty commensurate with Colorado, just based on our population and the demographics that we have and the accessibility that we have in California. Any reactions?
One of the things that jumped out at me was when one of the kids actually said the schools force us to use social media. So even the ones that want to resist it are forced into it. And we've seen that here. Flyers have disappeared. You have to go and find the information or get it electronically. So they're complaining about that, but yet we're part of the problem. We're enabling it in a sense.
Yep. There's almost this expectation in schools that you will need technology to access your curriculum, your instruction. But I don't know that there's the expectation that you're going to have to be on social media to engage in school, right? It is the access. It's the accessibility in your hand, in your pocket, that you walk through every day. Any other feelings that you might have? All right.
Okay, so looking at trends in teen mental health, and if you follow the news, you'll know that the CDC recently released a huge study on adolescent mental health. So there at the top, you will see anxiety, ADHD, again, the lack of ability to sustain focus and or impulse control, anxiety problems, behavior problems, and depression. Are among the most commonly diagnosed mental disorders in children. Estimates for ever having a diagnosis among children aged 3 to 17 years in 2016 to 2019 are below. So you'll see we're looking at almost 10% of school-age kids being diagnosed with ADHD, so about 6 million. About 9.5% diagnosed with anxiety. Almost 9% being diagnosed with behavior problems, and about 4.4% being diagnosed with depression. And again, these are our school age, 3 to 17, preschool to seniors, preschool through high school students that we're looking at. A 2019 study of more than 6,500 12 to 15-year-olds in the U.S. found that those who spent more than 3 hours a day using social media might be at the highest risk for mental health problems. And that was according to the Mayo Clinic. And again, kind of going back to the question about suicide rates in California, the part of what the CDC looked at was suicide rates, and they were nationally. And what they found was that nationally, suicide rates are on the rise, and our attempts and hospitalizations are on the rise nationwide, unfortunately, among our children. And you'll see the two links there at the bottom. So when you access this online, you can click on those and they will take you to the research, both the CDC study as well as the psychological effects of social media use online. So for adolescents, depression, substance abuse, and suicide are obviously the biggest concerns. Yeah. So among adolescents, 12 to 17, so really looking at middle school to high school, in 2018, 2019, yeah. So again, 15% had a major depressive episode. Almost 37% had persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness. 4% had a substance use disorder. Almost 2% had an alcohol use disorder. See illicit drug use. Almost 19% seriously considered attempting suicide. Almost 16% made a suicide plan. And 2.5% made a suicide attempt requiring medical treatment.
There's an infographic there just showing you the timeline of suicide rates across the country, but also what's nice about the infographic is the moments in which, or the years in which, certain social media apps became accessible to our students. Just one more video. This video, I think we're going to go and talk about more explicit content, so just prepare yourself to be a little uncomfortable. This conversation is about sexting.
Dating in 2020. How did dating relationships begin?
The guy says you're hot, pretty much. The guy will like add you on Snapchat, and then you might like say you like each other, but you know, of course it's over text, it's not face to face. Then you guys might have a thing, hooking up with each other.
So you hook up before you are dating?
Yes. People don't really like go on dates. It's kind of you just like hang out, or like guys just use you. It's true.
We couldn't communicate in person because we like built the relationship online.
I had like the same experience, only 3 months. He asked for nudes, and when I said no, I don't send them. He dumped me.
For many young people, sexting could be considered the new first phase.
Kids call it nudes, call it sexting.
Yeah, no, everybody knows what it is. Everyone knows sexting is a thing.
In my school, sending nudes is very common.
It's mainly between people who aren't actually dating.
Do you know of anyone who's been affected by it at all in your school?
Affected by sexting?
Yeah, like I've had an incident or a bad thing happen to them.
Well, yeah, like nudes of girls go around the school all the time.
Really?
Yeah.
We are seeing more and more young people that expect to jump right into sexual acts without the relationship portion before that, without getting to know each other, without going on that first date, without holding hands, without having that first kiss. They're jumping straight to send me nude photos, send me a video of you masturbating, and that's happening younger and younger.
And then 8th grade, there was like 2 different groups. It was like the group of people that like did like send nudes or like did all these things, and then the group of girls that like didn't do it. And there was like just a very distinct, and it was 8th grade, and that's when and I divided the groups was honestly, yeah. And like now, like my brother's in middle school, and like I sometimes hear him, and then like a bunch of kids I babysit in middle school, like it's happening younger and younger. And like I mean, like 6th and 7th grade, like
With sexting, while the studies typically focus on the ages of 12 and older, I've been in schools, elementary schools, where sexting has already occurred with 10 and 11-year-olds. We have a lot of teachers and counselors come in, like try to discourage us from doing that type of thing. But obviously people don't listen. Like if you have a teacher or just someone like telling you constantly not to do it, it makes you more just want to do it and like to try it out.
Is that amount of communication needed before a boy feels comfortable asking somebody by text for a nude?
You're pretty much lucky if you get about 2 weeks into talking to them before they ask.
Or even, like, sometimes they don't even just like talk to you, like they just
demand it.
Yeah.
Or send their own without us asking.
Yeah. What about guys? Do they send nudes?
Yeah, disgusting. Who wants to see that?
I wish they would.
No, one time I was with a friend, and we were having a sleepover, woke up, and good morning, it was 8 a.m., and I was like, I don't need to see this.
They're unsolicited, like most of my friends have gotten them. And
I feel like for girls, for the most part, get disgusted by it.
What do you think percentage-wise of girls have received them?
High percentage.
Probably, yeah. More than half.
Yeah.
Do a lot of people you guys know send nudes?
Middle school.
That was a huge thing. Oh yeah, you guys have like huge problems.
Scandals.
Yeah, they're like these rings almost. They like got caught and the police would get involved.
In middle school, that's like the peak of like, which is totally messed up.
It's just so casual. Then when a girl does it, it's totally different and looked down upon, kind of.
Some girls I know, like, they just like won't say no because they're like scared of like the repercussions because they don't want to be yelled at or called a prude or like.
And you're constantly judged, like that's so true. Like
they're either like, oh, well, she's a slut and will do anything, or like, oh, she won't do anything with guys, and there's really like no in between.
It's a no-win situation. If you give it to a boy and then you're a slut, then the girls find out about it, then you're cyberbullied by the girls. If you don't give it, then some girls will even jump on the bandwagon. You know, I gave it to so-and-so, what's the problem, why won't you do it? What do you do in that situation? Because you know you can't win.
I don't think people think it's a positive for doing that type of thing, but it definitely gives you a lot of clout. Like, you have a lot of attention on you, like good or bad, and so people definitely like want clout. They like do like almost anything just for people to like pay attention to them.
If the good girl sends Johnny something that she normally wouldn't, everyone's gonna be like, let's get more! And then all the guys will go after her too. Oh yeah, then she's got like 20 new ads on Snapchat, 3 new DMs.
But behind closed doors, people are like, she is a whore. And people act cool around her, but like behind closed doors, people hate her.
Let's say your daughter was dating a football player. She breaks up with him. She hasn't had sex with him, but he says, you need to give me a little something, some pictures, and then I'll stay in the relationship. So she does it, she gets pressured, and she does it. And they break up. Well, I talk to kids all the time, what happens when you break up with those pictures? Let me take a step further. What happens when you break up with your boyfriend, and his new girlfriend goes in his phone and finds your pictures? It gets distributed.
Especially with Snapchat, which was, you know, kind of more or less created for that exact purpose. It gives people a sense of, like, oh, it's not that serious, the pictures go away, but we all can realize now, look back and say, well, no, that's definitely not true.
Yeah, once something is out on the internet, social media will latch onto it, people will download it.
So it's like a Dropbox, and it was like, I guess some guy like went to our school, made it, and it's like just girls' nudes, just random people. And you could, yeah, exactly. And there was like a list of like all the people that had accessed it, and like it was even like people that you wouldn't think really like good guys that you wouldn't think would like engage in that kind of stuff. But some girls had no idea that their pictures were like out in the open for everyone.
All of these naked pictures and videos guys get from girls they went to high school with. They're in their college dorm, they go on A9IB, and they trade them like Yu-Gi-Oh cards.
I mean, this girl that I grew up with, she had a sex tape actually, and it was leaked. I remember even I, who didn't even go there, had access to it, but it was sent around, and we were freshmen.
One of my most hated terms is not my kid.
Parents suffer from a disease called the NMK syndrome. It's described as not my kid.
My kid won't do that. My kid would never. My kid's friends aren't like that. My kid's school isn't like that. You're wrong. Everybody's community is like that. Every school is like that. Every kid has the potential to do any one of the things that we're talking about here. No, even my own kid.
Okay, let's take a heavy, deep breath. Just want to talk about some of the parental trends. These are things that can be helpful. Hopefully, these will also lead to some meaningful conversations at home as a family. But in terms of digital grounding, passwords, friend following, family talks, and boundary setting. One of the things I want to talk about boundary setting is, you might have heard it in a previous video, but kids go home, they have their cell phones in their room constantly. Well, we also know that they're also have a lot of momentum to want to have those likes, want to have people follow them, all of the loves, right? And so that also interrupts their sleep patterns because they're constantly glued to, did I just get another like? Did I get another notification? Did I get somebody who wants to follow me? But we also know that nothing good happens behind closed doors with a cell phone, with that access. So setting boundaries is something that you might want to start with in having a conversation with your child.
Do you guys, if they do get a picture from a boy, are they supposed to go to the school?
I
what
would
are they supposed to do when they do get something?
You as a parent,
If they have it on their phone, you can take it to school. You can also contact law enforcement about that.
I would definitely try to make contact with that parent and contact law enforcement. But can we hold on for questions really quick? Okay. The next set of videos, we'll talk a little bit about some of the hidden apps that students have access to. I'm not going to show it to you because we're kind of running out of time. But there is a calculator app out there where students are able to hide photos, where there's a password that is needed to access those photos. We just want you to be aware so that as you might be having conversations, as you might be looking at your child's phone, just know that there are some apps out there in which students can still hide information from you.
Were you showing me, or did I? Apple.
Yeah, your new Apple update has a
spot where you can hide it, and you have to type in your password in order so you can put a file of pictures that are password protected on your iPhone to hide them from other people.
Yeah. Thank you, iOS
Yes.
update 16.9.
Is that under hidden? Is it called hidden?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you click, and it's got the little lock next to it, meaning that it requires a password. Yeah.
We're gonna skip this part for time, but we just wanted to close with you to just talk about some parental controls.
So one of the best is actually listed on the right-hand side over there, bark.us, and you will see a video from Bark coming up. Unfortunately, right, anything worth it comes with a price. And so you'll see this is one of the best apps for monitoring. Prices range from $49 a year for a basic plan to $99 a year for complete monitoring. So you're looking at maybe $5 to $14 a month. The pros, it monitors conversations and messages, sends alerts for content, screen time management. You can cover multiple devices. Again, as the more you pay, the more you get from it. The cons, it does have limited monitoring features for iOS, so for Apple. And again, only the premium plan lets you monitor texts and apps that your student's using. So now what? You can see from the videos, parents stay involved, right? Be present, set limits, make sure you know what your students are doing. It's hard to monitor everything that they're doing, but have those conversations with them every night at dinner. Use the parental controls available on your device, like the family sharing, the Find My Location. My kids call it stalking. I call it parenting, right? And knowing where they are. You can also set controls on screen time and their requests for apps. Invade your students' privacy. There is no such thing as privacy when they are underage and they are in your home. Read their text messages, be their friend, be their follower. Know what's going on with them. My kids know that there are random phone checks. And that means, and it kills me because it means that I'm going to have to waste an hour of my time reading through a bunch of nonsense about algebra homework and, hey, do you have this? Can I borrow it? But they know that I'm going to check, and they don't know when those random checks come. So any given moment, mom may be reading and looking at what's on their phone. Okay?
There's some information about strongly used apps. We're going to let you guys peruse those. They're part of our PowerPoint, but we're going to give time for our next speaker. And we'll stick around for questions, so I didn't ditch you. Don't worry.
Thank you. Try to get this so you can hear me. There we go. Hi. Need to shake? This is like big stuff, right? My name's Krista Weens. I am the Executive Director of Central Valley Justice Coalition. We are an anti-trafficking organization. So we've been at work here in the Central Valley since 2009. On your table, you have a couple of flyers about our resources. You can learn more at our website, justiceco.org. And I also have some materials here, as well as this t-shirt, if you like this t-shirt. And so I'll be around this evening to answer more questions, but I just want you to know that there is more tools available online. And classes. So the one flyer in the middle of the table offers you a discount. We have a lot of online courses. We also have a separate branch of our organization called Students Ending Exploitation. So if all of this is heavy and you need like a positive note here about what our kids are doing, we also have a lot of kids who are very aware of these dangers, and they want to make sure that their peers are not being exploited, that their peers are not falling into these same kinds of traps. So Students Ending Exploitation is an opportunity for youth to educate their peers through social media. So we're actually using social media as a tool. There is information there. Your kids can follow our account. It's c.justice, and they can learn from other people their age who are creating content for them. There's also an opportunity to launch clubs on campus. We have all the materials and everything necessary so that if you've got really involved kids that want to take up a project like that, they can actually empower their peers to be making a difference on campus. So there's really good stuff happening too. Everything that was discussed is similar to what I would teach in this online class and in in-person classes. I don't dispute any of these things that were covered this evening. What I focus on specifically is on human trafficking. So I want to make sure that you understand that all of the things that we covered tonight lay the basis for vulnerabilities that are created in our kids. So all of the mental health challenges, all of the loneliness and the depression and the sexting and the increased relationships, I mean, all of that, those are vulnerabilities. And everyone has vulnerabilities. So we often think of vulnerabilities as a weakness. And what I try to help people understand, let me see if I can find my slide here. Human trafficking is an exploitation of one person's vulnerability for another person's profit. So everyone at every stage of life has vulnerabilities, right? When I was a teenager, I was insecure and I really wanted boys to tell me I was pretty and I wanted friends, and I may not have had social media, but I definitely knew if I wasn't invited to something, right? I can't be the only person that experienced that level of vulnerability as a teenager. So now I'm an adult and I never feel left out, right? No, of course, FOMO, there's a whole name for it, right? I notice when my friends are posting pictures at coffee and I'm like, well, why didn't I get to go, right? So there's vulnerabilities that exist for us as well. And I think one really important thing that we can do as parents is talk to our kids about that reality. This is not only a kid problem. These vulnerabilities exist for all of us. We have additional vulnerabilities, and it's why we're in this room tonight, because we have people who depend on us, right? You would do anything for your kid, including come and sit for 2 hours in this room and learn about the horrible things, right? Because you love your kids, which means that if your kid was in danger, you would do anything for them. And that is powerful, and it is a vulnerability, right? Vulnerabilities aren't necessarily bad, they're just a state of being human. What is bad is exploitation. So in good, healthy communities, we recognize one another's vulnerabilities and we put on a class, right? We educate each other, we provide tips and tools. We notice that our friend has lost their job and they may need a little bit of support, maybe connections, and we're gonna send them job opportunities, right? That's support for someone's vulnerability. Exploitation says, oh, you lost your job, I've got a quick way you can make money. Right? I'm noticing the vulnerability, but I'm not supporting it, I'm using it so that I can get what I really want. And that's human trafficking. What we often fail to recognize is that under the age of 18, anyone who trades sex, pictures, images, sexual favors, videos for something of value is by definition a victim of human trafficking. We see a promiscuous teen. We say things like, well, I guess if that's how she wants to behave, right? The truth is, if they have traded sex for anything of value and they're under 18, it's considered human trafficking. How many of you have heard the terms child prostitution? Child prostitution is not a thing. It is a term that has been thrown around, but it is not a thing because prostitution implies consent. And under the age of 18, we have said that you can't consent to that. So, under the age of 18, trading sex for something of value is human trafficking. What's of value to a 14-year-old? Phones, shoes, AirPods, cash, right? We tend to only think of it as money, but that's not the only thing that can be traded. I tell you this because it's so important that we as adults recognize that the problem is not the child, the problem is the exploiter. So when we see that kind of thing happening, we're not going to rush in and blame. We're not going to say, I can't believe that they're living that kind of life. I can't believe they're dating all of those boys. I can't believe they have these kinds of relationships. I can't believe she would do anything for money. We're going to say, I can't believe somebody would use a child like that. 17 is a child. But very often what we see is 17-year-olds that have been hurt and dismissed because they themselves portray, well, this was my choice, and it wasn't really a big deal. Okay, so we need to have eyes that see, right? Just like all the social media stuff, our kids probably aren't going to see it the same way, so that's why we're here. Right? So one really important thing that I teach teens when I work with them, and I want you parents to learn too, so you can go home and help your kids, is the phrase, I know I made a mistake, but right now I need help. We often behave as if our children aren't supposed to mess up. And then when they do, and I'm saying this as a parent, I have 4 kids at home, all still in school, 9 to 16, and how often have I thought to myself, oh my gosh, how long have you lived in this house? Why don't you know this already, right? And when we do that, when we have that kind of response, they don't want to come to us when they've made a mistake. So the kids that we see in our programs and those that we walk alongside and those that our partners help, those kids often have had something happen to them and they're afraid to tell someone because they're going to get in trouble for making a mistake. So every kid in all those videos knew what sexting was, right? And what do? They do it anyway, right? Because, as I said at the beginning, their frontal lobe is not developed. We're expecting them to make decisions that they physiologically can't fully make, okay? So kids know at one level, and they make different decisions, right? How many of you did something your parents still don't know about? Right? Of course, we do. We make mistakes. Most of us were just lucky enough that nobody could post it online when we were looking for a job, right? But that's the world that they're living in. So how can we equip our kids to say, of course you're going to make a mistake. Of course you're going to do something that I told you not to do, but you didn't really think that I knew what I was talking about, and you're going to do it anyway. No matter what you did, I don't want it to be worse, and I want you to have someone there to help you. So whatever happened, the phrase, I know I made a mistake, but right now I need help, will get me there every time. We can handle the mistake part later. My job is to take care of you and to protect you. Because what I don't want is for you to keep it a secret because you weren't supposed to go to the party. Right? When I work with teens, one of the things that we often talk about is this idea that, well, she was asking for it. And because that's sort of a common stereotype, common language that our society has used for a long time, when a child of any gender is assaulted, they often don't report it. It's very common. It's more common for boys to not report sexual assault. In fact, I just heard last week that the common range is a 20-year span before males report that they experience sexual assault. So if you went to a party and you were assaulted and now you come home and you feel like you can't tell anybody, and now other people have pictures of it. Do you see how fast that goes down if we're not talking to our kids about the fact that sometimes things go wrong? And the fact is, sometimes we do all the right things and they still go wrong. So we talk also about, what do I do when something changes? I used to do trainings where I would tell kids, don't talk to anybody online that you haven't met in person. Simple rule, right? Make sure that all your online friends are real person in-person friends. And then 2020 happened. And what did we do? We put everything online because it was the only option. And suddenly I recognized that my child, my second grader, had done an entire year of school with people she'd never met in person. I couldn't use that anymore, right? She'd never met her teacher in person. So how do we instead equip our children to recognize healthy relationships and then also to speak up if something changes? Because we do this too. We engage online with somebody that maybe we followed for a while and we really like the things that they post, and so we become friends with them and then we have a conversation, right? I'm an adult and I have done that. I have online friends that I've never met in person, but sometimes it shifts. Sometimes those people then begin to ask us to do something that we didn't really want to do. They push our boundaries. They make us feel uncomfortable. But if they've built a relationship, especially for kids, it is very difficult because they're second guessing themselves, right? So we see this in online gaming situations where a kid will be playing games with people that they know online, and then this person will say, hey, send me a picture and I'll give you the cheat code to get to the next level. And now that kid will say, send you a picture? Oh, what, are you chicken? It's no big deal. This is what guys do. What's wrong with you? Right? So now this has escalated and the kid says, oh, I guess it must be something wrong with me, and it's just a picture. Right? So it's like little encroachments into their boundaries. And now if that has happened, and maybe it's happened a couple of times, and now this person is saying, if you don't send me another one, then I'm going to send it to everybody at school. Or if you don't send me another one, I'll tell your parents what you did. Notice it's not, I'll tell your parents what I did. I'll tell your parents what you did. And now we've created this situation where if we haven't talked to our kids ahead of time, they don't know that they can come to us, right? Because they're going to get in trouble because they shouldn't have done that thing in the first place. Or you might take their video game away. And even though that might not make sense to you, because you know the danger here, the genuine feeling, you know your phones are still in the middle of the table. That sense that I'm going to lose something that actually has me connected to the outside world is really significant. So, exploitation of one person's vulnerability for another person's profit. That's the basic definition of human trafficking. Some examples of vulnerabilities. This is not an exhaustive list. Many others were listed earlier this evening. There are plenty that are missing. And what I point out is that most of these things we don't get to pick. We can create vulnerabilities for ourselves, right? We can go to the party. We can meet up with the person. We can do those things that increase our vulnerabilities. But lots of our vulnerabilities weren't up to us. We don't pick the house we grew up in. We don't pick whether there's gang violence in our neighborhood. We don't pick whether we were abused or neglected, or we don't pick our age. And so we tell kids all the time, the age you are creates a vulnerability. Doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It means that, for example, you still have to have a permission slip signed, right? We do that on purpose because we want an adult who cares for you to be looking out for you. And that's all wonderful when the adult who's looking out for them cares for them. But that's also not something that everybody gets to pick. All right. I'm going to skip just a bit. We talked about this. That just for your information, the terminology is commercially sexually exploited children. This is CSEC. If ever you need to report this, I encourage you to use the terms CSEC. Not everybody is trained to recognize or work with minor victims of sex trafficking, but the words sex trafficking or CSEC tend to get the right person there a little bit more reliably. So if it's a social worker or law enforcement officer and you're needing to report something, to say that it's CSEC is helpful. You can also report directly to the FBI if there are cyber things happening. There's a cyber tips line online. I think it's cybertips.fbi.gov. Let's skip to the video if we could, Lisa. And we're just going to show the first 5 minutes of this. But it's not explicit, but it is hard, like the earlier ones. The video's not showing up here, Lisa.
I never thought I would be chased.
Perfect. Thank you.
Child predators. It was 2 years ago when our team intercepted conversations between a 12-year-old girl and a 40-year-old pedophile. He wasn't just talking to her, he was abusing her, coercing her, collecting images and videos, and no one in her life, her parents, sixth grade teacher, or friends, knew what was happening. I have a sixth grader of my own. I have 3 kids, actually, but you don't have to be a parent to be devastated by this. I work for a tech company that uses artificial intelligence to detect issues like grooming and sexual predation, and this is something we see constantly. These abuses are occurring quietly and mostly go unreported, and we want parents to know exactly what we know about what happens online. So we made a plan.
A man has been arrested for allegedly raping a 15-year-old that he met over Snapchat.
Instagram has become the #1 social media site.
At the top of the free download. We also see firsthand the predatory symbiotic relationship that exists between Instagram and Snapchat.
We would create a fictitious 15-year-old girl, complete with a believable social media identity, put her online, and document how long it would take for a predator to approach her. But creating a person out of thin air is complicated. We needed photos, but we knew we couldn't use an actual teenager. It would have to be someone on our team. I'm 37, but our graphic designers assured me that with the wonders of photo manipulation, they could magically make me look over 2 decades younger. We bought clothes and accessories, studied body language and facial expressions. We methodically covered and edited signs of aging, wrinkles, weight shifts, and stretch marks. Meanwhile, we coordinated with federal, state, and local law enforcement. Then we built a story around her, a history, a family, a social circle. Libby was born in 2004 and is a sophomore who recently moved to Indiana. We created multiple online accounts for Libby, prominently displayed her age, and posted typical teen content. We even created virtual friends for Libby who would comment on her posts. With everything in place, we would launch the project, give it a few months, and see if anyone would buy it. So we hit the button, and Libby went live. Within the first hour of posting on Libby's accounts, 7 adult men contacted her. By the end of 9 days, that number was 92. The conversations ranged in severity from making sexual comments to sharing and requesting explicit photos and videos, to manipulation and threats. The onslaught was so massive, it took 5 of us playing Libby full-time to keep up. We decided to move off-site where we could scale up the operation and gather as much information and evidence as possible. Since Libby is 15, men might try to falsely justify their actions towards her because of her proximity to adulthood. Would parents question, where's the bar? Would a 13-year-old face the same barrage of predators? A 12-year-old? How young could it possibly go? The graphics team transformed me into 11-year-old Bailey. Bailey is afraid of the dark. She hasn't had her first crush yet. she's still prepubescent. A parent might assume Bailey would be insulated from any sort of predatory attack. We launched our 11-year-old persona online.
444 and go.
One like from a guy whose profile photo is a penis. So let's say
1 minute and 7 seconds. We have a message request.
Although this, sorry, 2 more requests just came in. How much time? A minute and 40 seconds?
Yeah.
How
old are you? You go to the profile, you know that is a child. It also says in the profile that the child is in 6th grade.
Another one.
It's just lighting up, like the inbox is just boom, 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 boom.
An incoming video call in less than 5 minutes.
I can't see you. I'm going to be shy.
They all say don't be shy.
We can stop it there.
Few parents know.
So how much of that, assuming Libby was a real kid, how much of that did she choose? She put her photos on, right? She chose that. Did she put anything that deserved those kinds of responses? No, but would she probably feel like it was her fault? Yep, especially if Libby was my daughter and I'd told her she wasn't allowed to have social media, right? So now it's going to be even more challenging for Libby to come and ask for help if that's what she's facing. So I think it's important for us to just recognize what our kids are up against. That whole video, you can go to YouTube and look for Bark. It's the same app that we were talking about. Bark, mom, 11-year-old. It pops up really fast. But the video ends with showing just how easy it is to get somebody to come meet them in person. Okay? And we see that. We see that kind of thing happening, especially with kids who have additional vulnerabilities, who have previous childhood trauma, who are growing up in foster care or have other life challenges going on. It may be much more likely that they're willing to go meet somebody because their vulnerabilities are great, right? So I just want you to understand that this is really something that's happening here in the Central Valley. The first victim of human trafficking in Fresno was identified in 2010. Do you know where that person went to school? Buchanan. Yeah. Clovis PD does not have this data for us, but Fresno PD has said that they've identified human trafficking on every high school campus and almost every junior high campus. And I'm just quite sure that Clovis doesn't look different than that. It's ubiquitous. That does not mean that all kids are going to be trafficked. So I don't want you to leave this room thinking, oh my gosh, it's hopeless, right? There's a little bit of that feeling, and I don't want you to think that. I also want to acknowledge that this is just a really hard thing for us as parents to know how to deal with. Our parents didn't deal with this. We don't have a model. We're playing catch up. We're trying to learn new apps and stay on top of all the things. And let's be honest, it's not possible. We're never going to be as good as them. This is why parenting skills are also important. Having conversations with your kids is important. Understanding development is important. So I mentioned I've got 4 kids at home. When my first got her phone, I was doing random phone checks. I would just say, it's time to hand in your phone, and I'm gonna look through it all. But what I started to recognize pretty fast is that what that made her wanna do is just delete stuff. So I didn't think that was gonna be a very good idea for very long. I also recognized what would happen to me if somebody asked for my phone. Not because I'm doing terrible things, but in fact, a friend reminded me of this just this weekend, that when we were in high school, we passed notes, right? Anybody else pass notes in class? I passed notes. Our geometry teacher intercepted the note and read the note in front of the class. We were mortified because we were totally talking about somebody, right? And maybe it wasn't dangerous and maybe it wasn't actually bullying, but having that read out loud was humiliating. And that's not the relationship that we want with our children. So for us, for our family, Bark was really helpful because it allowed me to have a conversation with my kids where I could say, I don't actually want to know all of your stuff. First of all, it's not that interesting, let's be honest. 90% of it, I don't want to read. I don't think it's funny. I don't, right? My job is really not to hover over you and watch every move you make. But I also do have some life experience. I do have my whole brain developed. And I'm going to be able to see things that you're not going to be able to see. So what I want to do is be able to have conversations with you. So what I personally like about Bark is that it will show me it will flag with its algorithm, and you can adjust it. So my younger kids have higher levels, my older kids have lower levels of sensitivity. But it will flag the content that triggers the algorithm. And then it sends me just a chunk of it. It monitors text, Spotify, social media, Gmail, Google Docs, all kinds of stuff. Microsoft Teams, all those things. And then it sends me just a snippet. So I can see the problematic text, and then maybe a couple before and a couple after. And a lot of the time I can just ignore it, because it's like their friend calling them stupid, right? But once in a while, there's a big one. So an example is another girl at school was cutting. She was clearly in mental distress. She was telling my daughter that she was cutting, but my daughter's not like the one to handle that. And because she's such a caring and empathetic kid, she may well have tried to be the support for this child. But it allowed me the opportunity to say, let's talk about this. What other adults are involved? Does this child's mom know? How can we be a good support as a family for her, but not you for her, right? These images behind me are a reminder just that our society is often normalizing some of these things for our kids. So the conversation piece is really important. I encourage us to have these conversations. Like when you go home tonight, there's going to be a little bit of temptation for you to just like burn their phone. And I don't blame you, but it's probably not going to go very well. So rather than taking their phone and saying you're not allowed to have anything ever again and here's your flip phone, instead, what if you said, hey, here's what we talked about tonight. How real is that for you? Where have you seen these kinds of things? When do you feel anxious? When do you feel left out? What's the overall impact of social media on you? I had a girl one time that came to a youth group that I was leading. She walked in, she was so mad because her parents took her phone and she was just fuming. And about 15 minutes later, she said, I'm actually really glad they took my phone. I really needed a break from it. And I think sometimes our kids just don't know how to say, all these things are piling up and I don't know how to take a break. So the suggestion was made before about where we leave our phones at night. Phones can live in a public space. Alarm clocks are still a thing. They can be purchased. They're not even expensive. And your phones probably have lots of good controls to be able to shut all those features down at a certain time. So I know like my kids' phones at whatever time based on their age becomes so that they can only call or text parents or grandparents, the people that we've selected. So there are good parental control apps built into phones these days that work. It's also worth having a conversation with your kids regarding social media about what's the age that the social media company says you're supposed to be. Have them check. If they're signing up for a social media account, they have to check a box. Now, obviously, all they have to do is check it. But why does Snapchat say that you're supposed to be 16? And if you're 9, What could be the problems? So what if you talked to your kids about those things? And I don't recommend that you do that all at once. Don't go home and keep them up until midnight because you need to process all the stuff. Just little conversations at a time. There is a wonderful documentary called Screenagers. It covers all kinds of stuff, including how to talk to your kids, but there's a lot of resources on their website, screenagers.com, I think is all it is. Common Sense Media is another wonderful tool for parents. They have digital device contracts. They have digital literacy classes for youth. They have a way for you to see like movies, games, video games, TV shows, what age is appropriate and why. They break all these things down. It's a really great site to have in your toolbox. They also do a lot of research, data. And so one of the things that they have just come out with in the last month is that 75% of teenagers are looking at pornography or have seen pornography. 75%. And the majority of them, or the average age, I should say, the average age of first exposure is 12. So if we're not talking to our kids about that, we might be behind the 8 ball on that one. So talking to our kids about what do you do if you see something. There's wonderful books, Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. It's a child-friendly. It's perfect for my 9 and 11-year-olds. Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. It's a way to talk to our youth. If you're a teacher in this room, I also have a lesson plan that you can use with your kids all the way down to 2nd grade, because the truth is sometimes the firewall doesn't work. Sometimes kids are being exposed to things at school too. So we need to be able to have conversations in the same way that we used to have stranger danger talks, right? How do we navigate these things? Okay, that was a ton of information, and I know there's more, but oh, well, here's the, okay, this is one last slide I'll show you. If you're looking at these 6 people, imagine your 15-year-old self. Who are you going to trust? And who would you maybe be leery of? And maybe even think about why. Your 15-year-old self. Now, some people would say, well, number 1 looks like my dad, and so he feels safe, right? Like, there's lots of things that go into why we feel the way we do. But, I mean, you know where it's going, right? All of them are convicted traffickers. Those are real people. Every single one of them has been convicted of trafficking. Again, not to terrify you, just to let you know that this is another conversation point with our kids. We just don't always know. We don't know who we're looking at. We don't know what their end game is. And so what do we do if something changes? If I thought I could trust this person, and then it turns out they're not who I thought, where can I go to? Who can I call? If it's not mom and dad, who else is it? Okay, that's what I encourage you to do with your kids this evening. It's already 8, so I'll hand it back over to the team.
All right, so I know this was another really hot topic. We've done suicide prevention, we've done drug awareness. We have another drug awareness coming up. We're repeating that session because we had a request for that. But again, it's just an important topic that our kids are dealing with every day, whether it's at home, whether it's after school, whether it's on the weekends. So we really, Lisa is my partner in crime over here. It is our mission to kind of find these topics that are relevant to our kids and to you guys. And like I mentioned before, I'm a mom of 4 kids. Lisa has kids of her own. So we're really just trying to be a support for all of you. So if you have other ideas of things to talk about or hear about or learn about in the future, because let me tell you, I'm definitely not a perfect mom. I don't know that anybody is a perfect parent. So we learn something every single time, and we want to find the topics that are meaningful to you guys and meaningful to our kids. So I do want to say thank you again to our presenters tonight. So if we can give them a big round of applause. And I apologize that we went over a little bit tonight, so they're going to hang out if you have any questions, but we'll let everyone else go. You don't have to stay if you don't have any questions. I do also want to just let you know our next parent night, the flyer is in the middle of the table. You can sign up online like you did tonight. Food, childcare, all of those things are available again. And the topic next month is anti-bullying. So if you're interested in that topic, there's the sign up for that. We'll send it out via your schools and stuff again too. And then we do have a few, I think like maybe 20 books If anybody's interested, you can pick up one of these social media for parents books. That's just a little resource for parents.
Krista also has information on the Justice Coalition. She has t-shirts, she has other things if you're interested in talking to her about that.
Otherwise, have a great night. We hope to see you again in March, and stick around if you have any questions. Thank you guys for coming.